As inspiration for this video, I googled the phrase, meetings are. As you can imagine, there were a lot of results. In fact, there were just over 12.7 billion, yes, billion results. Needless to say, not all of the results were complimentary. In fact, the first few were anything but. Some included meetings are toxic, meetings are a waste of time, meetings are useless. The well-known website Entrepreneur was even more blunt in their assessment, going as far as calling meetings one of the worst business rituals. I would be lying in that a previous office where I worked, you could actually hear the collective groan as meeting invites were received. Although some leaders seem to love the idea of meetings, it would be fair to say that nearly all managers and employees dislike them. They're often seen as a productivity killer, and research suggests that they can also be a financial drain. There was a Fortune 500 company estimated that pointless or poorly run meetings represented in excess of about $75 million a year. Holy shit, $75 million a year. That's nuts. Let's work it through for a moment, as we all know what a bad meeting looks like. Imagine with me. You are on your way to the meeting room, or more likely, you're having to join via Teams /Slack /Zoom, but you have no idea what the meeting is about. You are in the meeting asking yourself, why am I here? The conversation gets hung up on details or gets sidetracked entirely. People are looking at their phones, working on their laptops, or have just turned off their camera and microphone. The meeting seems to drag on and on and on and on and on, even though it was meant to finish about 20 minutes ago. There are plenty of people in the room, but the decision makers are not. This is why after the meeting you feel no closer to the answers you were seeking than before. In fact, you leave the meeting unsure of whether anything was decided at all. Does this mean we should relegate in-person meetings to the corporate past, along with floppy disks, cassette tapes, remember those? Or even typewriters? This is even more pertinent now that we are more efficient communication mediums like email, content management systems, CMSs, or Dropbox. But I don't believe so. Well, not quite. Despite all of the dislike, not every meeting is a waste of time. When used appropriately, I believe meetings can make your team or company run more efficiently by serving as a team-building tool, creating a shared sense of purpose, and even providing a creativity boost. Running an effective meeting is neither difficult nor should it be a chore, because the right approach and resources will engage attendees, inspire them, and produce results. So without further ado, don't be a meeting bore, because here's how I run a super efficient and effective meeting. So it may sound silly, but there is actually quite a lot you can do before the meeting actually starts, and I would say this is the most important part. Sticking to these and doing it vigorously will put you at an advantage. Be radical enough to apply them rigorously, and yes, the more radical you are, the less painful the meeting will be. The laxer you apply these rules for effective meetings, the less efficient the business meeting will be. Now, who wants that? So here we go. Number one, is the meeting needed? Although it seems like an obvious question, reality suggests that it is not. So I would say at this point, check yourself before you wreck yourself, from the meeting perspective at least. I know it's a very cheesy phrase, but it made me chuckle. What I mean by this is ask yourself if the meeting is really necessary, and then ask yourself the same question again. The purpose of doing this means you are challenging yourself to the validity of the meeting and not just putting in a meeting for meeting's sake. The sad fact is that a lot of business meetings just shouldn't take place. The topic should be resolved by a quick stand-up or brief face-to-face conversation, in much the same way you don't email somebody that stood behind you, or if you need an immediate answer. If you need somebody to make a quick decision, take a walk to the person's desk, or go old school and pick up the telephone, and address the topic right away. That's it. No need for a meeting. Number 2, no clear purpose, no meeting. So if you cannot define the purpose of a meeting, you shouldn't have it. Simple as that. Having a clear expected outcome sets the fundamental context for all effective meetings. Now here's a bonus tip. If you do send out a meeting request, add the purpose line. No, not the actual subject line, but in the body of the invite. Me personally, this is something I do. I state whether it is a discussion meeting or a decision meeting. It is clear and concise. This is something I actually use in all meetings as I schedule, as it sets out the expectation early as to what I'm trying to do. Number 3 is about no unnecessary attendees. Now, don't invite people who just simply shouldn't be there. This doesn't mean making it political, just make sure that everybody in the room is relevant. Any just in cases attendees are going to lose time attending the meeting. They might just upset people, and to be quite honest, they're likely to add to confusion or inefficiencies, which is what we can all do without. In any case, have a quick chat with the person in question, and a good rule of thumb is for efficient meetings is to have a maximum of 7 participants. Number 4, no agenda, no meeting. Now, we all have the goal and desired attendees in mind. Drawing up a clear meeting and agenda is critical. This means we can clearly communicate what the good version of your meeting will look like. Now, it goes without saying that you must include any relevant materials and instructions for the attendees, but just make sure you get the balance right. Number 5 is around choosing the right duration. Keep the meeting as short as possible. Keep it short. It's all about getting the right balance, but in the same way that the perfect speech is 18 minutes long. That's why TED Talks are all 18 minutes, by the way. Having a tight schedule helps people focus on the goal and the essentials. Effective meetings don't need to last an hour. 25 minutes might just be enough. Think in the agile methodology in which Scrum daily stand-ups portray meetings that we need to have on a regular basis. They are short, focused, usually around 3 questions, and achieve a full team update within 15 minutes. So don't drag it out. Don't be RuPaul. Be concise, be focused, and then get the hell out of Dodge. Now remember, no preparation, no meeting. Just because you are setting up the meeting doesn't mean that you are absolved of not doing your prep too. If you attend a meeting without having prepared for it, well, you lose your time and make others lose theirs too. So what should you do during the meeting? Here are 6 additional ways to run an effective meeting and make sure that you just don't have a really shit one, basically. Number 7, start on time, end early. Ties in with getting the right duration for the meeting, but if you take your own situation, wouldn't you rather more time to do what you actually need to do? How often do you have colliding meetings without an in-between buffer? My diary of the last few weeks has been absolutely horrific. Back-to-back meetings with only the chance to eat lunch at 3 o'clock is madness. It is very likely that all attendees have similar agendas, so make sure to start the meeting on time and finish at the announced time, or if you can, beforehand. By putting this agreement in place, it has 2 positive side effects in the long run. Firstly, people will show up on time and stick to the agenda. And secondly, focusing on the expected outcome of the meeting. Now, that's a win-win all round, right? Number 8 is no devices. Now, this one is easier said than done, and I know can have mixed reactions. Yes, we all live in a digital world, but why shouldn't you write your notes down on a tablet or computer? Well, the simple answer is when you look at your device or you're trying to write some notes, you might be distracted by an urgent notification or an email or a recent update on your Microsoft Teams stream. If you want to be less radical, ask for everyone to put your devices into flight mode before joining the meeting. I've had mixed results with this one, but it is worth a try. It is harder to do when you're working from home and everybody is behind a screen, especially if people turn their cameras off and turn their mics off. Are they paying attention? But, you know, there's nothing you can do about that. But when we are meeting in person, give the leader of the meeting the due courtesy and care that they deserve. Put your phone over, put it onto flight mode, Only use it to take notes if that's what you're doing. Now, number 9 is around no ego. There are lots of reasons why meetings can get out of control and turn into boring, slow and unproductive experiences, which is why I'm sure we can all imagine the whole death by 1,000 cuts, in relation to PowerPoint, or death by PowerPoint even, or decision by committee paralysis. Even with a fair conductor and a proper setup, a meeting can still tip over. And now one of the main spoilers is ego. Participants' egos can spoil meetings even with the best setups. So, to make sure this doesn't happen, set the ground rules out early at the beginning and make sure that everyone is responsible for preventing it from happening. Now, why not take some inspiration from the New Zealand All Black rugby team as an example, where even the greatest Kiwi rugby players still have to abide by the no dicks allowed rule. That is around leaving your ego at the door. Now read the book Legacy by James Kerr, because that goes into talking around even if you are the most capped rugby player in All Black history, he still cleans the sheds at the end of every match. Business is full of egos and politics and annoyances, but keeping them out of meetings is always worth fighting against. Number 10 is around listen actively. Don't interrupt. The most powerful antidote against any disruptive ego is active listening. Now, like real active listening, I've mentioned in previous videos, active listening is one of the greatest life lessons you can learn, and I've learned it as a life coach, but it's a real asset to any leader and should be well within your toolbox to be deployed. Makes it sound really grand, but you should be able to use it. Meetings are fundamentally a place to listen and be listened to. Listening actively can be a bit of a challenge, but you can train it by observing yourself during meetings. Do you find yourself tuning out? Well, just bring yourself back to the present. Are you thinking, what am I going to have for tea? Pop-Tarts. But when you realize that you're doing this instead of listening to the speaker, you are actually being rude. You're not only not paying attention, but you're also not listening to what's being said. So this is the equivalent of the proverbial turning your back on this person speaking, which you would never do in real life. So why would you do it during a meeting as well? You may need to practice the habit of active listening, and it's one that we can all improve on. I'm certainly very fortunate in that it's something that comes more naturally to me, but I still work hard to stay present in the meeting. Here's a bonus tip. You can build the habit of active listening in a meeting by using an imaginary, or even real, ball. This ball gives the holder the right to speak. The participant who has the ball is the only person that is allowed to speak. When he or she decides to pass on the imaginary or real ball to the next speaker, this is the moment that that person is able to speak. This tool will be appropriate for some meetings and probably not for others. I'm thinking boardrooms here. But even if you do try the game in your head, learning how to speak at the right time is key. Number 11 is around sticking to the agenda and use a parking lot. Very American phrase for saying some topics need to be separated out and discussed at a later date. People expect a specific outcome and are prepared for that specific topic of discussion in your meeting, not for other topics. If other topics are being brought up, keep bringing the conversation back to the agreed agenda and park other topics that pop up during the meeting in a parking lot. Now, a parking lot is quite simply a list on a flip chart, a whiteboard, a computer screen, wherever you can write down any important topics that appear during the meeting but aren't part of the agenda. This way they don't get lost while you keep focused on the original topic of the meeting. Sounds good. Number 12 is around recapping decisions and action items. So when you get to the end of your meeting, make sure that you write down any decisions and actions along with a due date and a name of the responsible person for each item. It may feel like overkill, but I promise you doing so will save heaps of backwards and forth or possibly future disagreement in the future. Quickly recapping the agreements and actions at the end of every meeting is a quick and simple way to be clear over each participant's actions, certainly when closing out, and the moment you walk out the door, you've probably forgotten everything that was discussed. So what about after the meeting? Well, once the meeting has been closed and you sit back and bask in the reflective glow of running a super effective meeting, there are still a couple of things that you need to do. Fortunately, they're not too onerous and will show everyone who participated that you mean business. Pun intended. So what are they? Simply send out the memo with the decisions and the action items with the due dates and responsible person to all the attendees as soon as possible after the meeting. And then follow up with the dates that have been agreed on. Simple. Some of these may be more obvious than others. By putting them in this order, it means that you will certainly not be accused of running a crappy meeting. If you and your company suffers from having meetings to plan for meetings or meetings for meetings and having a meeting about a meeting, it means your meetings are broken. Please don't let that be you. You now have no excuse. If you found this useful, I would highly recommend this video here where I talk about the 8 secrets to great leadership. And with that, have a great day, and I'll see you all in the next video. Cheers.